going to show you how to work some ribbing, which is knits, a combination of knits and purls. Commonly used for hats. They make the brim of the hat in a combination of knits and purls, either 1x1 or 2x2, which is most common, I believe, is the 2x2. Sometimes I've seen them do 3x2, which would be 3 knits and then 2 purls. But this makes a very stretchy, nice fabric for something around the like would be around the brim of the hat. What I've done so far is just to show a quick sample. I've cast on 20 stitches with the long tail cast on method. I've got my tail end on the underside, my working yarn in the front. We're going to knit 2 stitches. I'm going to do a 2x2 ribbing. So I'm going to put my needle into the yarn on the left needle on the underside of that first stitch to the back, from the front to the back, wrap around from the back of the stitch from right to left, pull the stitch through on the underside and off, insert, wrap around and off. Then now it's time to work 2 purl stitches. So I'm going to move the yarn from the back to the front. So I've got my yarn here in the front of the work. I'm going to go into the stitch on the underside of the front of the left needle with my right needle. And I'm going to take the yarn and wrap it around again from right to left, and then go in on the underside of the stitch and pull that needle out, or pull that stitch off the needle. So again, for the second purl stitch, we're going to go in to the front with the yarn in front, into the front of the stitch on the bottom side of the left needle, wrap the yarn around from right to left, and push it to the back and take it off the needle. Then we're going to move the yarn to the back again to knit. So when you're knitting, the yarn is always in the back. When you're purling, the yarn is always in the front. So put the needle or the yarn through the needles to the back, insert on the from the front to the back underneath of the stitch to the back side of the left needle, and then pull your stitch through the front and off. Insert, wrap around from right to left to the front and off. Move the yarn again to the front of the work. We're going to insert purlwise. So we're going to go from, with our needles touching here, to the front of the work on the underside of the left needle, wrap around from right to left, underneath, and pull the stitch off. Underneath of the needle in the front, wrap around from right to left, under the back side and off. We're going to switch back to knit. Move the yarn to the back, wrap around from right to left, insert in the back, right and left, and then off, and then move the yarn again to the front. Then we're purling, so we're going to go underneath, in the front, underneath of the left needle, wrap the yarn from right to left to the back of the stitch and off. Insert to the front, wrap from right to left, and off the needle. Put the yarn to the back, insert under the stitch to the back, from the left side of the stitch to the back, wrap from right to left, and take off the needle. Insert to the left side of the stitch to the back and remove from the needle. Move the yarn to the front. We're going to insert from the right side of the stitch on the left needle to the front towards the left. Wrap around from right to left and to the back and remove. Insert in front of the stitch from right to left. Wrap the yarn from right to left to the back of the stitch and remove. Move the yarn to the back. Knit, knit, move to the front. Sorry, my yarn's getting twisted. move the yarn to the front, and we're going to purl. So we come to the front of the stitch, to the front of the stitch. There you go. So when we've made it all the way across, we want to make sure that our stitches are aligned along the bottom edge of the needle. And we're going to flip our work. Now, once we get to the other side, we want to make sure that when you're doing ribbing, you knit the knits and purl the purls. So you can see here, and it's a little bit challenging, but you can see you have a combination of knit stitches and purl bumps. Knits and purl bumps. These first two stitches are our knit stitches. So we're going to be knitting these first two stitches and then purling. And when we end, it'll be on a purl. And you can tell you're on the back side of the work because the tail end is over here on the left side of the work and the working is on the right. If both the tail end and the working yarn are on the right, you are on the right side of the work. But we're going to start now by knitting, and I'll show you what we look like when we get to the other side. And then we're going to, then we're going to purl. We're going to knit. Then we're going to purl. Then we're going to knit. Then we're going to purl. I'm going to knit. We're going to purl. Knit. And purl. Okay, so we finished that row. If I remove that, you can see we're getting a nice row of clearly knit stitches and clearly purl stitches. Knits, purls, knits, purls. So that works out very nice. Let me see if I can bring it in closer and focus so you can see the difference between the knits and the purls. I'm going to flip. We're going to work back one more time, and I'm going to see if I can show you how to correct a mistake. So if for some reason one of these stitches falls off again, I will wait until I get to the purls, or to the knit side of that stitch. So if a purl side falls off, or I'm almost doing that wrong. I'm talking and not paying attention. So if a purl stitch falls off for some reason or another, I will wait until I get back to the knit side of that stitch to correct it, because I find it easier to correct once I get into the knit section of the stitch to correct it. It's just easier for me to visualize, see where the stitches are supposed to go, and make those corrections. So let me see if I can knit across real fast and come to the other edge. We'll take a stitch off purposefully, and then we can correct it. Actually, I could do that here, I suppose. I get to the next knits. Actually, this purl bump will be just fine. So let's drop that stitch. And Actually, yeah, let's do that. Pull that stitch out. So if for some reason that stitch comes out, and you can see we've got that spare bar right there, what I'm going to do is, so I don't lose any more stitches, I'm going to push my needles up so I don't lose any more stitches, because that's what happens to me 9 times out of 10 is I'll lose a bunch more stitches trying to correct the one. I'm going to flip the yarn around to the other side of the work so I can make this correction. I'm going to grab my trusty crochet hook, and I'm going to look at it from the knit side of that stitch. Now I know that we're knitting and purling and we are on a purl stitch, but I can make this correction in the knit side of this stitch. So I see my stitch here, I see the bar that is supposed to be in place. I'm going to insert my hook into the stitch from the front to the back. So I went in this direction. I'm going to grab that bar and pull it through and up. And you can see that is a correct knit stitch. So when I go to put it back on the hook, I'm going to turn it over again, grab this crochet hook and try and finagle that so it's in the front. And I'm going to push the left side needle back down so I can get this on here. And I want to make sure that the right side bar of the stitch, which if you look at it this way, I had it twisted on the hook because I moved everything all around. But you can see that the yarn is straight now. And I've got my purl bar here. I want this right side edge of this stitch to go on the needle so that I have it going in the right direction. You can cinch this back up and continue on working. We're going to be making a purl stitch because this is 2 knit stitches. We got knits, knits, we have our V's right there, we have our first purl bump and our second purl bump followed by 2 knit stitches. You see the V's there. So we need to purl again to make sure that we stay in pattern. So I want my yarn in front, which it is. We're going to insert the needle into that purlwise, into that stitch purlwise. Then we'll move to the back and knit the next 2 stitches. And we'll take a look just to make sure we got everything correct before we go too much further, and everything is back in order. You can barely tell that it had moved, and as you knit on, any visible evidence that that stitch had fallen off will disappear, especially after blocking. It may be just a touch loose, but it looks just like it was always there. So that's how you fix corrections, and that's how you do the stockinette. I'm sorry, not stockinette. This is how you do 2x2 ribbing. Let me just continue on to the end and show you. And then we can end this video. Okay, so this is what our fabric is starting to look like. You can see how the purl bumps kind of set behind and the knit stitches sit in the front, purl behind, knits in front, and it's very stretchy. There's a lot of give to this fabric, and a lot of times when people are making hats and things like that, they will do this ribbing section in a smaller size needle just so that it sits on the head just a little tighter, and then knit the rest of the pattern with whatever size needle the pattern calls for, but they may step down a needle size or 2 to make this ribbing section just a little bit more firm on the around the head. But there you go.